What's the best short barreled 9mm loads? I've had a lot of people ask me to do this list of stuff that I've tested after I did the 38 Special. What's the best short barreled 38 Special loads? So I want to start by saying I don't hate the 9mm. I get accused of that all the time simply because when I test it, sometimes it doesn't perform well, and I'll just simply state the obvious. And for whatever reason, people get really mad about that. So that always makes my testing kind of complicated, because unlike every other cartridge and caliber, when I test 9mm and it doesn't work out right, or I don't say it's the best cartridge there is, just because I'm looking at the results and being like, hey, that doesn't look that good, get a lot of flack for that for some reason. So just want to start by saying that I have several 9mm pistols, and I believe that that's probably the caliber I have the most handguns in is 9mm, because it is kind of the meat and potatoes of the firearms world. Everybody should have at least one, even if you've got other calibers that you carry, because it's a practical thing to have. So I'm going to share my results specifically from my Taurus G2C here with a 3.2-inch barrel. Done a lot of tests in ballistic gel, and my test is a little bit unique because I use 4 layers of fabric, and then I use 3 inches of clear ballistics, and that's to kind of represent a pectoral muscle. Clear ballistics is roughly half as dense as flesh, so that's really like 1.5 inches worth of flesh for using 3 inches of clear ballistics. Then I use a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard as a rib simulation, and then into the gel. And that gives me a more realistic idea of how bullets would perform if they were to hit ribs. And that makes a big difference sometimes for how stuff performs. So I put together a list. I went through a whole bunch of different stuff I have, and I'm going to mention some 9mm rounds and the performance I got with this. I'm going to do 5 rounds that you should probably avoid. And just keep in mind, I haven't tested everything, so there's probably some rounds that perform good or bad that I don't even know about, just because I haven't tested everything in the world. But I tested a lot of 9mm because I do use it as my staple cartridge to compare to other things. So I'm going to go through 5 rounds that are absolutely terrible performance, 5 rounds that aren't bad that you might consider carrying if you can find it, and then it's going to only be 4 rounds that I would actually recommend, that I would say are the top rounds. And I'm doing this based on science. I'm not just going by opinion alone. I'm going by like the designs of the bullets, the size of the diameter, the depths of penetration, and all of that. So let's start with 5 rounds that you should probably avoid. One is the Winchester Ranger 147 grain. Out of this pistol, I got 1,020 feet per second, 340 foot-pounds energy. I got 21 3/4 inches of penetration through our rib simulation and through our fabric. No expansion. Came out to .358. The second one is another Ranger, Winchester Ranger 147 grain, just the standard one. 975 feet per second, 310 foot-pounds energy. I got 16.5 inches of penetration. That's good penetration, but no expansion, .358 diameter. Next one is our Federal Train and Protect out of this gun. That's a 115 grain jacket hollow point, 1,077 feet per second on average, 296 foot-pounds energy. Got 23 inches of penetration, and the bullet diameter came out to .357, so no expansion. Number 2 is our SIG 365 V Crown. This SIG 365, a lot of people carry that. That's a 115 grain jacket, a hollow point. I got 1,101 feet per second on average, 309 foot-pounds energy. With that, I got over 35 inches of penetration through a rib simulation, and couldn't find the bullet. Then I fired another one, and I got a little bit less penetration, and the bullet only came out to .351. So it's not even the size of a 9mm. It's like undersized. Just terrible performance with that. And then the next one is actually going to be the Gold Dot 115 grain. You would think that would perform fantastic, and it didn't do terrible, but I would say it's pretty bad here. 115 grain, 1,125 feet per second, 323 foot-pounds energy. That's pretty average. 18 3/4 inches, which isn't too terrible, and .42 expansion. So really, we didn't get much expansion at all. So not terrible, but that's kind of the best of the worst ones that I would completely avoid. Now here's 5 rounds that are mediocre. First ones are Critical Defense 115 grain, 1,097 feet per second, 307 foot-pounds energy. With that, it severely underpenetrated, only got 9 inches of penetration, but the expansion was 0.523. And that's really, really close to getting 1.5 times expansion, which would be 0.533. I'm listing that because 9 inches is really equivalent to 4.5 inches in an average body. So most people that are concealed carriers are not going to have the needs of law enforcement when they need to take side shots. So while that is low, it's not really a whole lot of over penetration, and I think it would work. So that's kind of mediocre. Our next mediocre round is our regular V crown. That's a 124 grain jacket hollow point. Did better than the 365. 124 grain, 1,074 feet per second on average, 318 foot-pounds energy. We got 19 3/4 inches of penetration through the rib simulation, which is a little bit over penetrating, but I'm not really going to count that as bad over penetration. Because 12 to 18 is what we want to see. I am using Clear Gel, which is a little less dense than organic, so anything within 20 inches is fine in my opinion. So 19 3/4, but we only got 0.484 expansion, but it is some expansion. Next up, we have our Remington UMC 115 grain jacket at hollow point, 1105 feet per second, 312 foot-pounds energy. It's pretty average. What I got with that is 17 3/4 inches of penetration, so not over penetrating, and we expanded to 0.488. So still not 1.5 times, but there's a little bit of expansion, so not too bad. Next one, number 2 on our 5 that are mediocre, is our Winchester USA white box, 147 grain. I got 981 feet per second on average, 314 foot-pounds energy, 15 3/4 inches of penetration with an expanded diameter of 0.511. So that really is the definition of mediocre. We got pretty good expansion, 0.511, not quite 1.5 times. And the last one here on our mediocre list here is our Gold Dot 147 grain. That gave me 967 feet per second on average, 305 foot-pounds energy. With that, I got 15 1/4 inches of penetration and 0.564 expansion. You'll say that's pretty good. I'm listed on here because the expansion was really odd. It wasn't all the way around consistent expansion. So just part of the bullet expanded, and that part would come up to a maximum diameter of 0.564. So I would carry it, but not great performance. Now here's our top 4 performers, and this is not going to be probably mathematically perfect when it comes to the crushed cavities and the permanent wound cavities, because I think stuff that's a little bit deeper that has almost as big expansion would kind of beat out these. But overall, this is what I would list as in order for what I would carry based on what I saw in the gel performance, because there's a lot of stuff that's hard to calculate, like how quick does it expand right out right away? What are those petals shaped like? Just you get a certain feeling of how things would perform. So my top 4 here, number 4 is going to be our Federal HST 124 grain. That's our standard pressure. I did test that recently. What I got with that is 1110 feet per second on average, 339 foot-pounds of energy, which is pretty good. And with that, I got 18.5 inches of penetration, which is really, really good. It's a little bit further than what 18 inches, but again, it is Clear Gel. And what I got for expansion on that is 0.561. So what I like about that is you get a lot of energy dump right away. So those petals expand out right away, and they tear a really large hole through my rib simulation, which would say that that's going to be doing a lot of damage. And that's really what makes a lot of the damage that equates to stopping power. If you look historically at a lot of the rounds like 357 Magnum, 125 grain jacket, hollow point, stuff like that, or even Federal Hydroshock, what you'll see is those have recorded data that are very, very high on stopping power. And the attributes that they tend to have are that they expanded right away and didn't really penetrate that far. But the main thing is that they expand out right away. And when I test the rounds that are all up high on the stopping power charts, they typically all do the same thing in my real world testing, and that is expand out right away, blow a massive hole through a rib simulation. And historically, 9mm has been kind of bad about doing that. There's a lot of rounds that will just go in and they'll just kind of poke through the rib simulation and leave a tiny hole and then expand out. And that's kind of deceptive because it would look like in the end that those would do fantastic, when in reality they're not energy dumping. So rounds that historically don't energy dump do tend to be pretty low on real world stopping power numbers. So I don't include those as being that good, but the ones that expand out right away I do. So our HST number 4. Number 3 is going to be our Gold Dot 124 grain plus P. Now I have tested the short barrel through a snub nose revolver. I didn't test it in this, so I couldn't include that, but I've seen tests of that, and honestly, the short barrel and the standard version do perform very similarly. So what I'm going to say about this is going to carry over to the short barreled 124 grain load. So what I got with that, 1166 feet per second on average, 374 foot-pounds energy. So that's actually the highest powered cartridge on this list out of this pistol. And what I got with that is 14.5 inches of penetration, really good energy dump. So that's really good, penetration. It's not low, it's not high, it's right there in that middle. And we have a .601 expansion. So a really good expanded bullet diameter. So I would consider that like really fantastic performance overall. Number 2 is actually going to be our Federal Punch. And that's interesting because it's not an expensive ammo. Here's a punch that I pulled out from one of my ballistic tests that I just did recently. And what I like about the Punch and the HST is they have thicker petals than normal. So when they energy dump and open up, they always tear a large hole through my rib simulation, which is giving those attributes of those rounds that have high stopping power, like that 357 Magnum semi-jacketed bullet or the old school Federal Hydra-Shock. So I really like that the Punch, even though it's an inexpensive ammo, is going to do that. And what I got with that through this pistol is 1116 feet per second on average, 343 foot-pounds energy, and that is a standard pressure. So that is a really good, that is actually the highest power for standard pressure that I have on this list, I believe. And what I got with that is really good energy dump. We had 18 3/4 inches penetration with an expanded diameter of .609. So if I look at that, I honestly think that that is the largest permanent wound cavity of all these, to have that kind of diameter and go that deep. So honestly, you could pretty much say that this is number 1 because of all those attributes and the low cost of the ammo. But I have one more that I actually prefer a little bit better, and that is going to be our Federal HST 124 grain plus P. It's a little more powerful than the Punch, 1154 feet per second, 367 foot-pounds energy. Huge energy dump like the Punch. The difference in this is that because it's a little more powerful, it got a little bit bigger expanded diameter and penetrated a little bit less. So it only penetrated to 14 inches, but it expanded to 619, so a little bit bigger than the 1/100th of an inch bigger than the Punch. But historically, I've always really liked the HST, and I just like that little extra power, because if you were to go through like a windshield or something, bullets don't expand out anyway when they hit something hard, like bullets like this. So it would punch through a little bit deeper than the Punch. But historically, I found that the HST in 9mm through every barrel length has been really good, and the short barrel is no exception. Works really, really well. But you could argue that the Punch kind of beat the HST in a way. So honestly, if I had to recommend a short barrel load of a pistol for the average person, and the average person is someone that does complain and say, I don't like spending a lot of money on ammo. I get that quite a bit on my channel, people saying that. I'm going to recommend the Punch as the number 1 choice. But overall, I personally think that the HST is better. But also, nothing wrong with the Gold Dot. Nothing wrong with that at all. I've tested the standard pressure, I believe. It's been a while, but I couldn't find that. I was looking for it, I couldn't find it. I think that performs similar to the Plus P, but just not quite as good in the 124 grain. So yeah, Federal has a lot of stuff on this list that did pretty well. 2 HSTs on my top 4 and the Punch on my top 4, and the only one that's not Federal is a gold dot, but that's actually owned by Federal. So that's my top list of great performing rounds. I would stick with the gold dot. I'd stick with the HST or the punch, to be honest here. I've tested a few other things like Golden Saber. Did okay. There's a Golden Saber compact handgun, did okay. I didn't even list it on this list because, it just had very inconsistent performance. It was kind of better in a way than some of the mediocre ones, but kind of a lot worse than these top four. So those are my picks. That's what I would trust and some of the stuff I would avoid. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.